we're really looking for people who are not looking for that boring business that anybody else can do. Something that's actually different. But really, it's a no-brainer because you paint something, it's not going to last very long. It's going to scratch. You do this, last 15 years, won't scratch, won't peel, looks brand new. You can wash it. But at the end of the day, would you rather just live with regret, thinking like I should have or I could have? Just try. I mean, I know it's easy to say. I'm an entrepreneur. That's just the way I'm wired.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast, where you can escape the corporate trap through franchise ownership. Here's your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, the Franchise Guide.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide, the show where we help corporate executives experience time and financial freedom via franchising. We have a very exciting show for you today. We have a two-timer, Carmelo Marsala from SprayNet. Carmelo, welcome to the show.
I'm good. Thanks for having me again.
It's awesome. If you watch SNL, I got to get you a robe soon. I don't know if it's the SNL robe for it's either 3 times or 5 times, but I know Tom Hanks I think started that. So we'll get you a robe for the next appearance. But wanted to invite you back. It's been a while. I think we had you on the show several years ago, and I wanted to bring you back on and talk about kind of what's going on with SprayNet. But for those that missed the first episode, give the audience a little background on who Carmelo is, and then we'll dive into SprayNet.
Yeah, sure. I founded SprayNet in 2010. We actually manufacture our own proprietary coatings. You'll see behind me here, I don't know if you can see this, custom chemistry for smarter painting. So basically, we have these surface tailored coatings that we apply to exterior and interior surfaces like vinyl windows, siding, kitchen cabinets. And we actually have 4 patents on our process and chemistry in order to be able to give that 15-year warranty that we give. So started that in 2000, started franchising in 2014, actually. So it's been over 10 years now, and expanded to the US. So we're originally from Canada, expanded to the US in 2022. And we actually now have more US locations than we do Canadian ones. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Oh, wow. So more, I did not realize that. So more locations in the US. Wow. Okay. With SprayNet, I know it started off with siding, right? I believe it was painting and siding. So talk to us about the evolution, because, when I talk to people, they always ask, it's like, okay, do I have to expand and add maybe a complementary business? We call it brand stacking. And then in some cases, brands will add on additional services. So talk to us kind of where you started and where you are today, as far as maybe if you could list out the services you offer.
Well, it's funny that you talk about brand stacking, because initially we only did exteriors. In seasonal markets, we basically operated from May to end of October. And that was enough for most franchisees to kind of make a living for the whole year and be happy with it. But, a lot of people wanted more. So then we stacked and layered in kitchen cabinet refinishing, kind of just to, complement the seasonality of our business. And then now kitchen cabinets is almost 50% of our business in the US, which is huge. It actually took off like crazy. And what's amazing about kitchen cabinets is when people do the cabinets, do the exterior and vice versa. And now we're adding on another business. We actually say, SprayNet for just 3 businesses. One, we actually have a new roofing business that I can get into if you'd like. But yeah, so this actually started in 2016. So we were doing exteriors. People would often be like, well, I'm not going to do the outside of my house because my roof's not going to match. I'm going to spend $20K to change the color of my roof. So, we set out to kind of find a way to change the color of the roof. But like everything we do, we didn't want it to look repainted. So we said, how can we actually just replace these granules? It took us years. In 2019, we actually had our first iteration of a product. We were able to spray granules on top of a roof. We did that, and we realized this had a whole bunch of other benefits. Increased impact resistance, wind resistance. Long story short, we applied for a patent in 2019. We actually were just granted this patent 2 months ago in the US. So we actually have a patent on our roof coating too. So we're really like 3 businesses in one. So there's no need to say anything else. Our franchisees have trouble keeping up already with what we have.
Congrats. So that's awesome. So with the patent, that's great. And now, with the different services, in a way, it's almost a reoccurring service, right? I mean, it's people are coming in for one service, like the siding, then the cabinets going to the roof, if not doing it all at one time. But, people always ask what's reoccurring and what's not. And it seems like people are, maybe testing you out on the exterior, bringing you inside. I mean, what's your experience been with that?
Well, it's funny. So we finally had our first customer who did all 3 of our services, right? Which is amazing because, did the exterior, they did the cabinets, and we went back to do the roof. And we're starting to see that more and more and more, right? If you like your vendor, your supplier, or whoever, someone's coming to your house, you trust them. Well, obviously he was in for other services, but the whole recurring revenue thing, it's funny because a lot of the recurring revenue is small. You know, you get these pest control or whatnot.
Right.
Our average job size is almost $6,000. So, you know, to have that recurring revenue over 10 years or have it right away, I mean, I'd rather have it right away. And then, you know, we tell our franchisees, our recurring revenue, like you mentioned, is now let's try to get the other services on that house. And we just leverage that customer and that customer acquisition cost, right? You give that ROI.
That makes a lot of sense. You're right. Reoccurring, like mosquito spraying, maybe $100 or a couple $100 a month. So what is that annualized?
Yeah.
Assume you can even spray all 12 months. So that is a really good point when you kind of look at the total job size. So awesome. There was a question I was going to ask. I lost I started thinking of that got me into a different, I was going to go in a different direction there. All right. So kind of going back to SprayNet, you know, we created a series. We're bringing on founders of various franchise companies in all different industries. And the reason we're doing that is to educate. Not every brand is going to fit what you're looking for. And really what it comes down to is not the widget, not the service, but really the characteristics of who does well in the business based off your experience, based off of that franchise avatar. So talk to anyone that's maybe looking into something like a company like SprayNet in the home services space. What are the key characteristics? Who is that person that you're looking for that will do well in this type of business?
Yeah, I'll tell you, we've been in for a long time.
Mhm.
We are not the right fit for everyone. I mean, that's just the reality of it. We're not a simple business. You know, we've got 3 services, we've got multiple spray guns, we've got all of this cool stuff, but the reality is it makes for a less simple business. But on the flip side, you got this higher barrier to entry, very unique, high margin. So someone who's looking for something simple, you know, not having to spend that much time, you know, building the business or whatnot, probably not the right fit for them. We're really looking for people who are not looking for that boring business that anybody else can do. Something that's actually different. You know, the flip side of that, like I tell people, is it's great. You're excited about the service. It is really cool. Trust me, I know I've been doing this for a long time. Customers are ecstatic about it, but the flip side is people are skeptical that it's possible, right? So it takes some time to get that awareness and get your business off the ground. So it is a bit of a deeper ramp, right? Like it takes a bit of time to get ramped up, but once you get ramped up, you know, we've done 13 houses on the same street, right? People love it, but it's not like roofing. Everybody knows, for example, that I need to replace my roof or a plumber or whatnot. Not everybody knows you can spray your vinyl windows or your vinyl siding or finish your cabinets in this way or do your roof in this way. It's an awareness thing on our end.
Yeah, education is key because I didn't know until we met several years ago that you can actually do that. And I go, wow, I already have fading on one side of the home. So we got a quote to replace that. And that was pretty scary given the home is just over 10 years old. So in actuality, you're not really competing, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're not really competing with painting companies. You're competing with contractors looking to replace the roof, contractors looking to replace siding or even cabinets, if I'm not mistaken.
We're lucky because we fit nicely in between. So like painters don't do a lot of the stuff that we do. So we actually refer them. We don't paint walls, right? Like we don't do like decks or peeling paint or whatnot. So we'll refer them work and they'll refer us back someone, right? There are some overlaps, but generally that's how it works. With contractors, often they'll refer us too, because instead of losing the customer or not getting the job anyways, they'll be like, well, you know what? Like there's no need to replace this. Like for example, in your case, there's no need to replace this. It just needs to just be freshened up. Here's a company that can do this properly. And then vice versa, we refer them when the siding is just destroyed.
Right.
And it's like, hey, so we're kind of nicely nestled in the middle where we get referrals and we can refer them out. So yeah, I guess we're an alternative to replacement in some cases. That'd be probably the most accurate way to.
That's a good point, right? Because even with the roof and the siding, sometimes it needs to be replaced. There's shingles missing, there's leaks, there's nothing you can really do. So what do you have an idea? So compared to traditional paint, because I'm sure people have tried painting their kitchen cabinets with the roller and just regular paint. So, you know, how much of a premium, I guess is the question, over paint? And on the flip side, what are people saving versus replacing cabinets or siding? I don't know if you have kind of estimates.
Yeah. So typically wherever there is overlap in us with conventional painters, we're generally about 25 to 30%, maybe more expensive. So like a huge amount. And, obviously versus replacement, we're probably a quarter of the price, sometimes even a fifth of the price. But really, it's a no brainer because you paint something, it's not going to last very long. It's going to scratch. You do this last 15 years, won't scratch, won't peel, looks brand new. You can wash it uh, actually at convention this year, I launched our new version of our kitchen coating. And one of my party tricks, I like to call it, was I actually started my presentation with a piece of our cabinet. I put wine on it. I put coffee on it. At the end of it, I just wiped it and showed everybody how nice.
Like one of those infomercials. Yeah, I like that.
I'm like, imagine like I would put, Musk where he throws that ball and it breaks
It breaks the glass. And it's true. I mean, that's the stuff that happens, right? I mean, let's talk real life examples of what actually goes on in a kitchen. So no, I love that. And you know, what what does it look like for someone? So someone just ends up, they buy a SprayNet franchise in the territory they live. What does the initial kind of team look like, and what is that franchisee doing? So where from kind of that first month to maybe month 12, what are they doing, just to give the audience a little idea as far as their role?
Yeah. So, I mean, we started training, right? So training, we've got online training, then we get into actual virtual training, and then we have our hands-on training at our Miami office. So that has to do with sales, financial planning, how to hire people, all of that fun stuff, all the basics of business, how to use spray guns, et cetera, which is fun. People love spraying, actually. And then from there, you get your first quotes, right? Those go to our call center. We schedule the quotes. We send out a sales trainer to do the first quotes with the franchisee. They sign a backlog. So once we hit, at least 10 jobs backlog, then we start producing those jobs. So at that point, you'll have hired a crew of 4 to 5 people. And then we'll come in and we'll do those first jobs with you too, with your crew, and train you and your crew. So that's typically what goes. I mean, that whole process from training to starting your first job, probably about 60 days, 60 to 90 days, depending on how quickly you're able to sign jobs.
And that's huge. I mean, not only you're offering training, but you're actually doing the first couple jobs with them. And that's where, I own franchises, and we talk about support, and every franchise, you can't look at, okay, this industry, and this is a sport. I get every franchise is going to be different as their approach, who they're looking for. And a big part of training is that hands-on training, the travel, because you go to training, at a remote location, at the headquarters, you come back, you're super excited. And it's like, okay, what do I do now? They almost need that extra push. Like, okay, let's apply it firsthand, directly in front of customers. Let's do a job. Let's come across all the issues that that you're going to come across on these jobs. So training and support have been kind of the number one question. It used to be, well, how much money can I make? Right. Joking. And it's like, well, it's just like any business, you're going to run your pro formas and things like that. But now it's kind of like, I've never owned the business. I don't know what I don't know. I really need that support. So can you go into a little bit more on the training, and maybe even touch on, the utilizing AI?
Yeah, well, like honestly, I spoke about it a bit before. What we do is a bit more complicated. So like as a result, we overcompensate on training, right?
Right.
Because we want to make sure that people can actually execute. Once you get it, I mean, it doesn't stay complicated. Like for us, it's easy now, right? But like, there's a steeper learning curve. So like on top of the hands-on training, we've got our internal social media. So like we've got internal social media where rookies, we have a rookie channel, an all company channel, we have a production channel, sales channel. People are asking questions to other franchisees. Honestly, it's an amazing community that we've built. We're almost 70 franchisees, and like the veterans are answering the rookies. I'm getting in there. People always joke, I love being on Viva Engage, which is our internal social media. I'm like literally there 5 times a day, just answering questions, because I love to be able to answer a question that the whole system can see, right? And then what's even better about that is we've got an AI bot, so ChatGPT, basically API, that goes in and crawls all of that, including all of our training materials, including all of any webinar that we ever given. It goes through the transcripts so that a franchisee or their staff can literally ask it a question, and it's got all the SprayNet knowledge. So it can answer a question 24/7. We're always in the back end there, seeing what questions are answered. If there's not a documentation, we supplement it. But it's crazy. Like it's answered over 1,000 questions this month alone. Like, and we're like, what, day 12? So like of staff, of franchisees. So like AI is just an amazing tool to supplement all the coaching that we can get.
I love that. Now and taking advantage. It's learning, and people. I'm sure a lot of people have the exact same questions, especially when they first start. So I love that. Switching gears a little bit. So you guys are originally based out of Canada. So this is more educational because I just received this question. So since you're based in Canada, I wanted to talk if you can just kind of briefly FDDs, franchise disclosure documents. We did a show with Houston Barnes a while back and how to review an FDD. But going back to if you are, since you are based in Canada, is there a separate FDD in Canada as you have in the US? And do they merge that information together? I guess if the audience doesn't know, can you explain the differences between the two?
Funnily enough, everything seems to be way more regulated in Canada, except for franchising. It's way regulated in the US.
Oh,
So
really?
we actually, yeah, it's like it's actually way better structures because so many more franchises in the US. So basically, we start with our US FDD because that's the most stringent, and then we update our Canadian one. But like
Mm.
a US FDD needs to be updated every year. Canadian one doesn't necessarily. It just if there's a material change. So really, our source of truth, where the most information is actually in our US FDD.
And does that combine the data between the two, or does it keep it separate? So if you want to look at, Canadian number of Canadian franchisees, is that included in the US FTD?
So it's all outlined. So it's not, you can look at it however you like. So
Okay.
the way that we do it in our item 19, which is where the numbers are shown. So I'm assuming you're referring a little bit to that. Now, the reason we do it that way is because most of our US franchises are new and our Canadian franchisees have been operating for longer.
Mm.
So we said, hey, here's what our new US franchisees are doing. Here's what our veterans are doing, just so that US franchisees can extrapolate in time what they could potentially be doing.
Gotcha.
What's cool actually is people always ask, well, yeah, but that's in Canadian dollars. Our average job size is actually higher in the US than it is in Canada. So we're not charging less in the US. We're charging dollar for dollar the same thing, actually a little bit higher. So the dollar amounts that they see in Canada are very easily, you can easily extrapolate that to create a sound business.
Wow. Okay. No, that's interesting. So I learned some stuff there. So I ask these questions for, to educate, but in the process, I learn as well. So that's awesome. What a lot of exciting stuff. Got a new patent, but also, when we talk with candidates, people looking to explore different franchises, they look for differentiators, and there's a lot of great companies out there. They offer great products, great training, but it's like, how do we get the word out to the masses as far as national exposure? Talk to us a little bit about that, because I've seen you online and we've seen videos. I think you teamed up with some larger companies. Talk to us about maybe national accounts and just how you've gained some national exposure.
Yeah, so we actually are in Lowe's, which is amazing, right? Our franchisees get to have a kiosk in Lowe's. The Lowe's associates talk about our service. They sell our kitchen cabinet refinishing service. That's just one of the ways. I mean, I think like most franchisors, it's how do you leverage your brand fund? So brand fund, for those that are familiar with it, is I think probably the best thing about being in a franchise is a brand fund, because
Right.
everybody can kind of contribute a little bit to this big fund that goes a longer way that you couldn't be able to do on your own. So, this year, for example, we're exploring HGTV, right? If you're starting your own business by yourself, you may not be able to afford HGTV, but now if we've got this combined purchasing power, we can, right? And we could do a lot of really cool things with this brand fund.
Right.
So really, I think utilizing the brand fund dollars to maximize exposure is probably, I guess, a responsibility of most franchisors. We're lucky we have a great team, and we're also lucky that we have a service that is somewhat sexy, right? Because it's different, because we got patent, because we got differentiators. It's a little bit easier for us to get influencers, a little bit easier for us to get exposure through PR. So, I said I was fortunate before. I'm saying it again. The fact that we have something different really helps us with that exposure.
Right. I love that. Switching gears, this is just something relevant in the news today with everything going on. A big secret, but talk to us about the effect on tariffs. That was something that actually came up in conversation with a family I was working with last week. And I know the answer to this. You guys did a great job in response, but I wanted to hear it directly from you. So how will tariffs affect the business? Will there be any effect? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming Gab, our friend of guys who helped you out. But let me dive into that one, because there's a lot of pieces to it. So number one, I spoke about how our average job size is actually higher in the US than it is in Canada. Well, I don't know if you check the exchange rate, but one Canadian dollar is 1.45 US dollars.
Wow.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? Which which means that we're basically cheap labor for Americans. Like, so manufacturing in Canada actually is a huge benefit for our U.S. franchisees. We do distribute through our U.S. location, but manufacturing labor cost is almost 50% cheaper. Everything is just much, much cheaper. So if you're charging, as they are in the U.S., the same or more, but you're paying almost 30 to 40% less for the product, well, you can imagine the profitability for our U.S. franchise is actually higher than our Canadian franchisees. And I've said this to them, so there's no secret. Everybody knows, unfortunately, the Canadians pay more for product, right? Just because of the reality exchange rate. Now, let's say we layer on a 25% tariff. That wouldn't increase the price of the product by 25%, obviously, because, what it costs us when we sell it are two different things. We distribute through our U.S. location. Honestly, it would probably increase the price to the customer at the end of the day. If the franchisees were to maintain their same margin, let's say they wouldn't want to absorb the difference, it would increase the price of the customer by 2 to 3%, which is negligible. You're talking about, let's even know it was 5%, just to make the math easy. On a $5,000 job, you're talking about $250.
Right.
Like, it's not like for the additional value that we have versus, conventional products or whatnot, at $250, we're not that price sensitive. It's not going to make much of a difference, right? So, I get it. It's scary because everything else will go up in price, but for us specifically, for our service, the fact that we distribute through our U.S. ER center, the fact that we have cheaper Canadian labor, is an advantage. This kind of just helps bridge that gap. But anyways, we'll even see if it actually happens or not.
Right. It's good. It's good to talk about because people panic. They see the news and they don't know the actual true effect of what that will look like. So I appreciate that. I'm sure that's come up in your organization, and it's great to stay ahead of it and just put everyone's mind at ease. So
funny because I thought the U.S. franchisees would panic a little bit more about it, but they've been so great about it. Like they're like, look, even if it were to go up 25%, which it won't, like our product costs will never go up 25% just because we distribute through the U.S. Let's say it increases by, I don't know, 5 to 10%. They're like, our product cost is 15% of what we're selling, right? Labor is really the big part.
Right. Yep.
So the increase in the customer is really what we're looking at. It's almost negligible.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. It's mostly labor, right? Paint is one aspect, right? But labor is going to be most of it. So very good point. I'm glad you brought that up and wanted to cover it. I like to cover the issues at hand because people panic. They don't know what questions to ask. So it's good to address. And every business is going to be different. Some people may be manufacturing in their home state, or they may be making changes. So it's good to ask these questions. Should be part of your due diligence when you're speaking with each and every one of the franchise companies. So.
Sorry, I don't want to lose my train of thought. But that being said, it has always been our plan to manufacture in the U.S. We manufacture a small portion in the U.S. We're going to continue to manufacture more and more in the U.S. The reason why we haven't done it yet is because it's actually more expensive. So, we actually just manufacture here, distribute to our U.S. center, and then distribute from there. But to manufacture in the U.S. would actually cost us more. So that's the reason why we don't do it. We don't want to increase the price, but it is in the plans to do it just from.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that makes sense. Let's see. I was listening to, it was a podcast. I don't remember where this podcast was, but it was an interesting podcast. It was president of the IFA, and I talked about this on previous episodes, and he had mentioned that this was interesting. 75% of people that they've polled showed that they had interest in owning a business, which I thought was interesting. So 75%. Of that group, of that 75%, 3/4 gave the reason that they never actually had moving forward with a business was they didn't know where to start, which was actually pretty interesting. I always thought it was going to be, well, it's money. They just felt like you needed millions of dollars, like you do with some of the bigger brick and mortar fast food chains. What advice would you give to someone that's kind of starting out, given that they're polling people and that seems to be the biggest thing? They have no idea where to start.
That's actually surprising stat. Like, that really will obviously contact someone like you, right? I mean, you know the business landscape, like obviously franchise. Look, it sounds biased, but the reality is I speak to friends and I was like, well, you're lucky you had this great idea and you started this business. I don't have this great idea. I'm like, okay, you don't need the idea, right? The whole one franchise, right? And if you don't know what franchise to get, well, hire someone like Giuseppe, right? You've seen the landscape because, you may meet someone, you'd be like, well, that person may not be a right fit for SprayNet and maybe for something else. And you'll put them in that direction. But like, if you don't know where to start, I mean, obviously hire someone like you to help you kind of navigate that landscape.
And I appreciate that. But if they're not ready to speak with someone, I always say kind of take a step back and just figure out whatever that business is. Don't even worry about the service, but figure out what the business looks like. And I always have people explore and stand like, what's your role? Are you keeping your job? Are you running it full time? I always say if you have the ability to run it full time, no one's going to run that business better than yourself. That's how I approached it. Some franchises will allow you to run part-time. Some prefer you to be full-time up front, but there's a major benefit of running the business full-time. You get a better appreciation. And not only that, you can figure out what role you want to play down the road. And part of that too is sampling different things. So just because you have a sales background doesn't mean maybe you want to be head of sales and going on appointments. Maybe you're networking at the Chamber of Commerce. So anything you wanted to add to that? Because I always encourage people, like, it's not that complicated. I think they're looking at the 4,000 franchises in North America and getting overwhelmed. I always say, don't worry about the franchise. Don't worry about the top 500 list. Worry about, what your role is, what you want to do, and what's your time frame. So anything you would like to add to that? Because this is something that comes up over and over again.
Yeah. Also, I know everybody says, like, don't get into business based on what you like. I know that I agree with that, because if you hate what you're doing, if you're not passionate a little bit about what you're doing, like, look, I I like home improvement. Like, I'll be honest, like, I love doing renos. I love getting hands on. I love seeing that final product. Like, wow, what a difference! If that doesn't speak to you at all, I mean, see if there's something that does, right? Like, I guess, like, choose your industry, and I wouldn't say, like, have tunnel vision on, like, this is the industry, like, look at other stuff,
Right.
but make sure you feel good about what you're doing. Like, when I speak to top performing franchisees, they almost always tell me the same thing. They're like, I didn't want a boring business. I wanted something that had an impact on the community. I wanted something that put smiles on people's faces and, create good jobs for people, right? And they're like, I'm happy to do this, right? So make sure that it checks the boxes that you want to take off. Like, for me, creating jobs and creating a good culture was key to me, right? Impact on community. Honestly, I never even thought of that, but that's a huge one. Like, I didn't realize, but that is a huge one, right? Like, some services are cool, but are you really having the impact on the community that you'd
Right.
like to have? Right. So, anyways, I'd say, like, everybody talks about boring businesses and everybody talks about, you don't have to follow your passion. And I agree with that a little bit to some extent, but to some degree, you should.
Right. Yeah, no, that's listen, people like the before and after. That's what home service is all about. Redoing a bathroom, SprayNet, redoing the roof, the exterior colors of the home. So people really enjoy that. And, if you really figure out, one of the questions, if we're not working together, to ask the franchise company, the franchisor, is, hey, what is a day in the life of a franchisee? What does that look like? Because you want to make sure you'll notice in many cases the roles are going to be similar in many brands, but are you going to be excited? Are you going to be enjoying talking about it? Is it something that's just going to be a grind? Well, you got options. That's why we try to figure out a model. Let's look at kind of the behind the scenes, what you're doing on a daily basis.
Because that's the thing, all things equal, no matter what, you're gonna be grinding year one, right? Let's assume everybody gives great support and you've got a good model and a good community and whatnot. You're gonna be grinding year one. It's gonna suck a little bit, but at the end of the day, are you being fulfilled by what you're doing?
Right. Right.
To an extent, because then it just, like, feels like, why am I even doing this? Right? Like, beyond the money. There needs to be something beyond the money. I know the money is very important, but there needs to be something a little bit beyond the money to keep you going, because it gets tough, and those dark days get really dark.
They do. It's just like the stock market. It's a roller coaster ride. It's ups and downs. It's cyclical. So I always say, go back to the why. That to me is why we started this. Sometimes we need that reminder when things aren't going as planned. And I think we've all experienced that, me included, in my past businesses, current businesses. It's cyclical. So, but absolutely, I think that's really important, and not to lose sight of that. So kind of, I always say, reverse engineer. Don't look at the brands to start. Look at kind of what the model looks like, what you want to be doing, what's the average day in a life, what are your strengths? Do you want a big staff? Do you want a brick and mortar location? Figure all that out before starting to look at brands. Why? Because when you look at the brand initially, in my opinion, and just like I did, and I won't name names, but in the restaurant business, you start to settle. I don't want to work nights and weekends, but I'll settle because I have to work nights and weekends. I don't want lots of staff, but I'll settle. So I kept settling to the point where the business looked nowhere near what my ideal business looked like. So figure that out. I definitely help and spend a lot of time there, but you don't need me to initiate that. Start with that short list, get your financials together. That's a good start. Reach out. We can absolutely help and figure out what the brands are. And sometimes you find the perfect branding. And guess what? Franchises are territory based. Maybe the area isn't available. So if you really like a brand, are you open to exploring, a 30 minutes away, 45 minutes away? These are the things that come up in franchising. And this is what I like to prepare people for. So that's awesome. What? Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry, just to add on that, like I've been doing this for almost 15 years now. And it's funny, what lights me up is testimonial Tuesdays and before and now pictures that people post on our internal social. Like you should see, and I may have sent you some, but like our franchisees are like, the customer was thrilled in caps. And then they put the review and the customer's review is just glowing. And it's like, that fuels you, right? That keeps you going. Like to be able to provide that service to people, make them that happy. And then you get, we've even had staff say, like, I had staff like, why do you keep coming to work? And they're like, the smile on customers' faces. Like it's a
Right.
different project, different challenge every day. Anyways, I'm not here to just toot my own horn here about brand, but just, that's what keeps me going. So it's find that thing that keeps you going.
Right.
So anyways,
Yeah. Yeah, you got to give that some thought and reflect. And sometimes I always say, like, when do you do all this? You got family, you got work. I always say, during the week, it's busy. Take time on the weekend, sleep in a little bit, spend some time there. That's where I did a lot of my deep thinking, because during the week, you got a million things going on, but really set aside an hour, figuring that out. Let the family know. If you're married, let your spouse know, let the kids know why you're doing all this. I talk about this quite a bit. I think that's crucial. Mom and dad are going to be working a lot longer. Maybe no vacation this year as we launch the business, but we're doing it to obviously, create some time freedom so we can spend a lot more time with you guys, have a flexible schedule, just like I do. We're big soccer fans, and I don't, miss my son's soccer matches, whatsoever. We go to practices, we record with those AI cameras. I'm the guy in charge of that, and I really enjoy doing that. So sometimes that time freedom is really what people are trying. There's only 24 hours. We have the same even in Canada, you guys have the same amount of time. So, so it's like, in all seriousness, we have the same amount of time. So how do we free it up so we can really spend the days as we see fit, as we want to spend them? Best piece of advice you have ever received?
it's a TED talk actually. I change this every time someone asks me a question, depending on what's going on.
What did you say in the last show?
But just based on this week, based on something that just came to mind this morning is be a giver. There's a TED talk by Adam Grant, Givers versus Takers. If you haven't seen it, I was strongly suggest watching it. Give to the world, give to others, be generous of your time. Be a giver, not a taker. And that ties into what I've been talking about the whole time. Like, something that you see yourself not just taking cash, not just being a giver to society, to community, creating jobs. I strongly believe that if you're a giver in the long run, maybe not in the short term, this always works, but in the long run, it'll come back to you. So just be a giver and not a taker.
And that's Adam Graham TED Talk, you said?
Adam Grant. Yeah.
Oh, Grant.
There's a 15-minute TED talk. I strongly suggest watching it. I talk about it all the time because it's just so true. And you feel it when people are just taking, when people are giving. So be generous with your time, with everything, right? And it'll come back to you.
Love that. I'm gonna look that up, and we'll put the YouTube link on in the show notes. Anything else we didn't talk about? Sorry, I got a little feedback. Anything else we didn't talk about? Got a lot of first time entrepreneurs or people looking to, leave the corporate grind to start their own business. Any other pieces of advice that you would like to leave the audience with?
I know it's cliche, but like, if you're thinking about it all the time, just do something about it. You don't want to like wake up 10 years from now and just be regretting it. Is it going to be the right choice? Maybe, maybe not. Like it may be harder than you think. But at the end of the day, would you rather just live with regret, thinking like I should have or I could have? Just try. I mean, I know it's easy to say I'm an entrepreneur. That's just the way I'm wired, but man, just do it.
And we all took risks. I mean, there is no guarantees that we'll have our job. There's no guarantees the business will succeed. But going back to TED Talks, and I forget the speaker, but grit. There's a TED Talk on grit, and it talks about just this unwavering persistence to just make things happen. understanding there's going to be the ups and downs, like the being cyclical and that kind of stuff. But just, making, this is the life I want. These are the changes. In order for me to have these changes, I need to really take control of my career. So it definitely won't be easy. It's going to be a lot of hours. As I tell everyone, I don't like to paint a picture where you just buy a franchise and what is it? I don't know if you remember back in the day, the Ron Popeil, set it and forget it. You just throw this stuff in the machine and it makes the sausage links for you. It's nothing like that. That you have to be involved. It's not just you pay the franchise fee, the franchisor runs the business. They would need you for that, right? They need you to have that grit and really to work the business, follow the system. So, but I encourage everyone to explore it. Start talking to other franchise owners, entrepreneurs, not people that never owned the business. Talk to people that own the business. You want to know how the ups and downs. How does it feel not paying yourself maybe the first month? How does it feel 2 years later when you're never missing, I don't know, a dance recital, a soccer event, and things like that? So talk to those people at different stages in life. I think that's super helpful, but ultimately it's what you make of it. You got to do your due diligence, but you got to start somewhere. And to your point, don't want to live with any regrets. And I see a lot of people coming back to me 20, 30 years of looking into it. Maybe they're fearing losing their job. Now they're in their 50s and 60s saying, is this the right time to own a business? Because I feel like, the end is near with the
Right.
job I have. So absolutely. No, that's awesome. I really appreciate that. I'm going to put that in the show notes. Good.
Nice. Yeah. And look, at the end of the day, there is no magic bullet. It's
Mm.
just about trying something. Like, we've been franchising for so long now that, like, we've gotten a bit more selective on who we want to let in, just because, like you should do, like, let's say you're exploring a franchise or whatnot, it's, do I feel comfortable working with these people? And actually, my litmus test is, do I feel like if times get really tough, that I can have a reasonable conversation with this person? And if the answer is not, without a doubt, no, yes, then maybe it's not a fit, right? And it goes both ways. Like, I always tell people, like, yes, we're exploring if you're the right fit, but you also need to be exploring if we're the right fit for you, right? Like, we got to see ourselves working together for 10 years.
Two-way. I always say it's a two-way interview. It's a two-way street. And a big part of any franchisor is you want to speak directly, whether it's in person or it's virtually, with the founder. So that would be Carmelo in this case. But I always say that the way I explain it is talk to the captain steering the ship. Because, SprayNet, whatever the franchise is, you kind of know historically what has been done. You have the franchise agreements. This is our system. But where is this business going? What do you anticipate? Challenges, additional services, whatever the case may be, maybe changes to marketing, working with another company like Lowe's. It's good to know and speak directly with the founders. And
I actually host calls every 2 weeks with potential candidates. We actually had a really good call last week. I think we were 8 people on the call, and it's actually fun because, some people piggyback off each other's questions.
Yeah.
We have a good conversation, and honestly, it creates content for us too. Like, I didn't think people had a question about that, right? Like, maybe we should put content on about that, because a lot of people have questions about that. So it's actually fun for me, fun for the group, and we kind of get to see who do you connect with, who do you not connect with, and that's how we invite people to the next stage in our process.
I think that's huge because, I know there have been other companies where the founder, basically you meet them at the very end. You don't speak with them, you meet them at the very end. And at that point, it's like, that's kind of decision time, right? Either you get accepted, you obviously have to agree to the award letter, number of territories, locations, whatever the franchise is. So I think that's crucial in the process for the founders to be involved and not wait till the very end to say, yeah, maybe you weren't a good fit. And I probably could have told you this 2 calls in, and vice versa. That the person exploring may say, love the brand, loved everything about it. But the founder, I think differences of opinion. Maybe I kind of feel like it should go in this direction. They're going in a different, and that's fine. It's not about right or wrong. It's about the match. So I love that. So I think that's what we're seeing more and more of, that where founders are involved early on in the process. And when people say, well, what are the odds of getting approved? And I always say the odds, in my personal opinion, should be pretty high, because at that point, if you've made it that far to get, invited to a discovery, virtual or in-person discovery day, then, you've checked off boxes on both ends, and there usually is a higher approval process, as opposed to never talking to the founder and going in blind, not knowing. So, not that it's guaranteed, but you are at the end of the day awarded a franchise. You are awarded a select number of territories. So, keep that in mind as well. You want to speak with founders, or maybe even request to speak with the founder, or maybe it's like in a group setting like you guys are doing. So I think that's a big plus. So, and last thing, I think I forgot this on our first one. Fun fact
About me?
Yeah. You remember
First
what you
one?
put down?
I do not.
I should.
A poor kid, so that's kind of fun. It's a party in my house. Did I say that the first time? No, I didn't even have.
No, I don't think you did. Yeah, they were younger, so I think you did not, because I think it was 2.5 years ago. I think is when the show last show.
I may have. Yeah, we got a surprise 2-for-1 special. We got twins trying for our third. So yeah, we'll go from 2 to 4.
So that's it. That's even more motivation that to stay in the business. So. And we're hardcore soccer fans, so that's we definitely enjoy the sport. But cool. Listen, Carmelo, I really appreciate it. Looking forward to having you back on the show. If there's anything, I always tell the guests that we didn't talk about, or something, even a link or something you'd recommend the audience to check out, shoot me an email. We always include a blog and show notes with some additional information. You'll find all the links. SprayNet, the TED Talk here about being a giver, grit. We'll include all those links in the show notes, and we'll definitely talk soon. Thanks again.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.